But Shakespeare had performed that with a bunch of DC burners at Capitol Fringe Festival, which after my first burn in 2013, I was like, I want to give something back to our community, but I also want to show people in DC what Burning Man is about, and what better way than to have people like Shakespeare and me just talk about being here. And so for 4 years in a row, we had DC Burners on stage telling true stories, and everyone gifted their time, and any ticket revenue we raised, we actually gifted to first-timers who came to see the show to help with their first time. And there are no restrictions on what they spend. They could spend it on costumes, on transportation, whatever. It was our gift to them to help them with their first experience for what we just shared on stage. And I think over the 4 years, thank you, yeah, it was pretty amazing. Over the 4 years, we gifted a dozen people something like $3,000 total. It was pretty amazing. So my name is Nexus. Again, my pronouns are he, him, his. I'm Black and Filipino. I'm 38 years old. I was born and raised in the area we know as Pamunkey, Piscataway, which some people call Washington, D.C. I am a cisgendered man, queer, ethically non-monogamous. I was raised religious, but now spiritual, so now we can get all of whatever you may have assumed out of me out of the way. Let me actually tell you some stories. I think I'll tell you the story about how I got my playa name, also very serendipitous in 2013. But I guess I should tell you the story of my name in general, right? Names are really powerful things. And my full name, which you will not know what it is unless you went to Catholic school with me several decades ago, is actually Nathaniel Rust Jr., which means I was named after my dad, and that was the thing. Like I was his son, but it was also weird because I was his fourth son. I'm like, oh wow, wouldn't you normally name like your first son your junior? But like those were things that I wouldn't even like think about until I got older. And as I grew up, he definitely tried to raise me as a son to do all the things boys should do, like hit a baseball and watch football, and those were things I didn't want to do. And so as I grew up, it was interesting how my name kind of changed with my identity. I was really close to my aunt and my mom, and they started calling me JR, an abbreviation for Junior. But also, if you know any Filipinos, you know JR is a really popular nickname. So it's Jun Jun, Boy Boy, list goes on. And they also love Dallas, so that might have had something to do with it. Please don't ask who shot me. I'm sick of hearing it. But JR became my nickname from 5th grade on. And so when I hear Nathaniel, it's like, it's not a name I identify with myself, right? So then I get here to Burning Man, I hear about like playa names. I'm like, ooh, what's my playa name gonna be? And like I make it through half the week, I'm like, wait, no one told me how you get your playa name. Like, is it like a practical joke? Does like some Burning Man shaman come out of a whiteout and like, here's your playa name? And then they just disappear. So me and a friend are walking around on Wednesday. Another first timer who was still wearing his tutu from the night before, who's been bitching and complaining. I'm like, but you're still wearing your tutu. And we come across the playa name help booth. Who here is familiar with the playa name help booth? Yes, no, it is a real thing, I promise you. And they help people with their playa names, because there's no right way to get a playa name, so I've been told, unless they lied to me. And it's really cool, because I was like walking up and listening. There was a line, they were about to close for dinner, and they had a bunch of encyclopedias in front. And this guy who was wearing this like leopard print uni with a mane of hair was helping the person in front of me figure out what their playa name was going to be. And it was really interesting, because in talking, he revealed that by day, in the default world away from here, he was an auctioneer. And I thought that was a really interesting contrast, right? He spends his living talking about one item to a bunch of people, and only one of them can get it for the most expensive amount, right? But here he is on playa, gifting each person a name of their own for free. It's like, that's pretty cool. So the person in front of me is like, oh, you know, I like traveling, and I like birds, and I like seasons. He's like, seasonal migration. I'm like, wow, that's cool. And he's like flipping through the book, looking for like migratory birds and just throwing them out there. I'm like, okay, that seems interesting. And then he gets to me, and I'm like expecting something similar, and he's like, let's start with your tattoos. And I'm like, sure, that makes sense. And I'm like, oh, you know, they all have meaning, and I get them during times that are meaningful to them. So like the DC flag I got on the date when DC was written into like legislation as the thing that it is, which is a place that you get no votes, but whatever. The Philippine flag I got on the Philippine Independence Day. And so he was like, oh, you're very much about like space and time. I was like, oh yeah. And like a lot of other things, like my mom's Filipino, my dad's Black. With my art, I try to bring different people together. And so there he was like intersections, crossroads, and nexus. And I was like, Nexus. And he's like, I think you have your playa name. I was like, I think we have my play name. He was like, I think you're really excited about it. I was like, yeah, I'm really kind of excited about it. He's like, calm down. He was like, let's see how it works. Take it for a test drive, right? Take it out to the city. Tell your friends what your name is. Tell strangers, right? See how it feels, how it lands on people. And as I did, and he was like, and if you don't like it, come back and we'll give you another model. I was like, this just felt really cheap. But I was like, okay, I'll do it. So I'm walking around and only my best friend, Eric, hey, like I got my playa name, it's Nexus. And he was just like, yeah. And I'm like meeting new people. I'm like, hi, my name is Nexus. And they're like, do you hug? And I was like, yes, I hug, because consent. And then we hug and we become a nexus of that hug and that connection. And ever since then, it's just like to the point where actually like back in DC, when I like do a show or play, like my name in the program is Nexus, because it's just like, it's the name that really feels right. And it started here. And so that's the story of how I got my play name. So if you're just joining us, my name is Nexus. My pronouns are he, him, his. I've been doing storytelling for a bit, which was really funny because I actually was a dance major in college and I loved musicals. So like the thing I needed to be on stage was choreography, an ensemble, and someone else to be the leads. And I have none of them right now. So this is still kind of terrifying. But I fell in love with storytelling, especially in DC, because I feel like in connecting with each other and being able to share our true stories, you just get rid of some of the things that, like, I love theater, I still love theater, but you get rid of the sets and the props and the choreo, and it's just us with each other, right? So I think what I'm gonna do next is actually share the very first story I told, which is how I discovered my love of dance. I didn't always like to dance. In fact, I was actually terrified of dance, more terrified than I am right now. Like in 7th grade, I remember me and my family and some family friends went on a cruise, and there were a bunch of younger people who were all my age with my mom's friends, and there's like a kind of disco on the cruise ship that we were like, ooh, let's be like adults and like go out dancing late. And we did, except they would be on the dance floor and I would just be sitting down. And they would be like, Jared, come on and dance. I was like, I don't know how to. They were like, come on, Jared, dance. It was like, I really don't know how to, but like, it wasn't like I don't know how to, it's just like, I'm actually terrified. Until, I don't even know what the connection was, but if you remember Criss Cross and their song Jump, and I was like, I don't know what it was, but I was like, I can do that, I can jump, I know that song, and when they say jump, I will jump. And I would like be practicing in like our cruise ship like room, and then we'd go out and I was like, okay, I can dance now. And I like eventually kept dancing in like high school. I do high school musicals. But what was weird was when I got to college, I kind of let go of that. It wasn't something that the small school I went to, this like private all boys school, they were like, you're gonna be a politician or a doctor or blah, blah, blah. So even my college advisor, even though I was like president of the drama club, like never once said, maybe you should do theater for a living, right? So I'm in college and I'm actually getting kind of depressed because I was really good in high school, but I just like started failing. I started not going to classes. I was like, I don't know what's wrong with me, right? And it was one of those things where my dad, who was always like, you can do better, but why aren't you? I'm like, I really don't know. Side note, here's an example of a moment like that. I remember in 7th grade, I was reading a history homework, and I just remember my eyes tracking the letters and going to the next page before I realized I had no idea what I just read. I just remember doing that 5 to 6 to 7 times and started crying. I was like, I don't know what's wrong with me. Why can't I just do this very simple thing? And it wasn't until I got to college, I was like, this isn't working. And I remember going to see a personal therapist who like backtracked all this, and they're like, it looks like you actually might want to get checked out for some kind of like learning disability. And I was like, huh. And I did. And at 20, I was diagnosed with ADHD. And I was like, you know what? Let me just take a break. Like, and it's weird because my dad was definitely like, nothing's wrong with you, you just need to try harder. It's like, Dad, it's literally the opposite of what's happening right now. And I did. I remember it was like 2000. I'd go out dancing. This was back when like raves were bigger than they are now and not as commercialized. More rave, less button. I just remember it was the one thing that I do regularly, and it wasn't even for anything but just dancing with my friends to be in community. And I remember one time when I was really sick, but I was like, you know what, I'm just gonna go out dancing. I felt better. And then a friend of mine was like, hey, have you thought about taking a dance class? And I was like, no, but I did, and I loved it. And all of a sudden I'm like thinking about how do I get back to school. I was like, maybe I go back to school for dance. Like I didn't want to depend on Ritalin or Adderall, which is useful for some people, but like I tried it and it just like, it wasn't where I was at. But going back to school for dance was like being fully engaged with my body was what got me back into this fairly traditional academic life. So like I ended up going back to community college and going to university, and I ended up graduating, finishing school, and like teaching and choreographing. And it wasn't even until my senior year where my dad was like, oh wow, you really love this. And I was like, yeah, Dad, like I do. Like he still wanted me to go to law school or something. But dance is the thing that got me back on track. And even though I'm not doing it now, I'm like literally doing the opposite of dancing right now. For what I needed in my life, it was the thing that got me through it. And so that is how I both discovered my love of dance and how dance got me to do more of what I love, which is be here with you all right now. How's everyone doing? It's Saturday of the Burn. Yeah?
Ready!
Yeah, oh, jeez. I hate it when people do this, but I'm going to do it because I'm a hypocrite. Do you have any first-time burners out here? Yeah? Welcome home again. I'm glad you could be here, and think about joining us on the stage here at some point. It is an open mic stage, open to any and everyone, whatever you want to do. Do we have a time check?
11:24 minutes.
Okay. What time? 3:48. Cool. I think I'm going to share a couple more stories. Trying to think about which ones. One will be actually a story I told last year, and then one more will be a new one I'm going to test drive on you all. So last year, hey, this is going to get heavy, it's going to be emotional. Content warning, it does involve family, mental health, suicide ideation. But this is the story about how Disney killed my niece. Now, when I say Disney killed my niece, I don't mean that literally. Obviously, Disney as an entity wasn't like, your niece is gonna die. But my aunt's obsession with Disney and the idea of an American Disney princess definitely didn't help. My aunt is my mom's youngest sister, and if you weren't here earlier, my mom's Filipino. They both came here, found wonderful families. But my aunt was like the baby of the family. She was my grandfather's little princess. And so when he passed away in 1999, she really took it hard, and I didn't realize how hard she took it until 2010. Flash forward to 2010, after my aunt had spent a lifetime of trying to be the perfect mom, the perfect wife. At some point she felt like she failed because my cousin Kathleen got pregnant out of wedlock while still in college. But my aunt got over her own like, wow, I'm a terrible Catholic mother, to I'm going to love my daughter and I'm going to love my granddaughter as well. Would babysit her granddaughter while my cousin finished college. But in 2010, something happened, and it was frustrating because I didn't learn what happened until after it happened. I remember I had been doing a show, and my aunt was like one of my #1 fans. Like, she never missed a show in my entire life. But she did. And when my parents said, your Auntie Carmela isn't here, and I asked what's wrong, she just said, oh, she's sick. Flash forward to the Monday after Thanksgiving, it's 3 o'clock in the morning, so Tuesday morning, and I get a call from my uncle saying, your aunt killed Angeline. What I learned from that moment was that whole summer my aunt was more depressed than she'd ever been. She tried killing herself several times. And then my uncle died in the Philippines Thanksgiving week, and that kind of just like broke her. My mom's traveling to the Philippines. My aunt's family is leaving her alone because, like, no judgment on them, but after a decade of trying to care for her, they didn't know what else to do. So after 4 days of leaving her alone, they take her out to dinner. They're going to Tyson's Corner, and as they're walking back, my aunt had picked up 2.5-year-old Angeline and dropped her over a 5-story walkway. The call I got was to pick up one of my cousins and to take him to the hospital, where I saw my cousin Kat holding her 2.5-year-old daughter before they unplugged her. The year that followed was terrible, and when I say, I started off the story kind of saying how Disney killed my niece, but this is really how this idea of perfection, of the perfect family, the perfect mom, the perfect uncle, kept us from actually like talking about the things that we need to thrive in our imperfection, right? The court trial that followed in the year pit my cousin and the prosecutor against my mom and the public defender, and now my aunt's serving 30 years in jail where she's absolutely not getting the help that she needs. And I can't even remember the last time I talked to my cousin, who has 2 new baby boys that I probably will never meet. So this story I share here because being here at the temple, I always think I know what I'm here to grieve and to let go of, and each year the temple's like, you still have to dig deeper. The first year was for my niece, then it was for my cousin, then it was for my aunt, and then finally it was for me.
Yeah.
Because I realized I've been holding on to this thing that I thought I'd failed in, this thing that I thought and was still blaming myself for, that was keeping me from moving on, and that I couldn't blame myself for it anymore. So, while this story started off as a negative, I hope we all find how to shift that and to let go of the things we need to find the positive and move forward. To be here together, because that's where we are, right here, right now. Okay, thank you for being here with me in that. I know that was a lot. There's no good way to do that. But what I love about being here is sometimes you just know you're in the right place at the right time with the right people. Also that if you're not ready for that, that you can walk away and then I'm not going to take it personally. I will say I shared that story yesterday. What was it? This camp was a bunch of like guys in like priest outfits, and it was like confession for cereal. And I was like, okay, here's a confession. I was like, I've only seen one sunrise here and I feel terrible about myself. And there was like Thursday, there's like, no, we really needed like a real confession, something that like weighs heavily on you and blah blah blah. I was like, okay, here's a confession. I was just like, bleh. And they're like, here's the cereal. Here's something a little lighter, I hope. Maybe not. But the story's about things that are too good to be true. And for me, that's been my jobs lately. The past 3 years, I always seem to be in a place where I'm like, this is awesome, and then shit just goes south.
Yeah.
The first time that happened actually was in 2013, and I remember going to my like first burner adjacent event called Freeform on the East Coast, and I remember going back to my job and being like, I can't be here anymore. But it was wonderful. It was this like artist factory in Old Town Alexandria. If you've ever been there, their torpedo factory, and yes, thank you for the woo.
Torpedo factory.
Yeah. But what for me wasn't feeling right was I was not telling the story of the artist the way I thought I needed and wanted to as a communications manager. And what was really amazing, one, they say never quit your job after a burn, which is exactly what I did. But there was something about being there in a community of creatives that even though I couldn't identify it, I realized when I got back to the torpedo factory, I was like, there's a disconnect here. And part of it might have been that the art wasn't necessarily art that I was connecting with, and the artists weren't necessarily people that were connecting to the community around them too. So I left that. I was like, I don't know, I'll figure it out. And also decided to go to Burning Man for the first time. So like, I was broke and unemployed and living on credit, but I was like, I'm just gonna make it work. And me and 2 friends did. We drove out here from DC. It's a 40-hour drive. We made it in 48 hours. I am not friends with them anymore. That was a terrible decision. But I've been back every year. This is year number 7. Another time, something was too good to be true. I was working for the Commission on the Arts and Humanities in DC, and it was really interesting, both being here in Black Rock City and seeing how like we helped make this, and then working at like a government organization where we're taking taxpayers' dollar, but also like giving it to artists. I helped manage a fellowship program that was giving $5,000 to $10,000 to like almost 100 artists each year, and that felt really good, especially in DC, where it feels a little DC.
Yeah, say it. Say it.
Yeah. Side note, as a DC native, the thing we did a couple years ago was tell stories from DC, not Washington. So there's a lot you might hear about Washington as our nation's capital, but there's a whole other city, including, who's heard about Catharsis on the Mall?
Woo!
Yeah. If you don't know, shameless plug, even though I'm not involved in it, Chapel of the Chimes has been built from pieces of temples that have appeared at this very unique burner-adjacent event on the National Mall. It'll be burnt tonight after the man burn, and it's also incorporated pieces of the David Best temple that was installed in the Renwick. Actually, it's still in, but they have tablets which people have written on. Funny story, the reason they have tablets is because in order to be in the Smithsonian, all of the wood's fireproofed. So the temple itself can't burn, which Yeah, very sad. But the tablets that they use for people to write messages are also funny stories. So we're there at the opening for the exhibition. I say hi to Crimson Rose, who, if you don't know who Crimson Rose is, she like helped lights the fire, literally and figuratively here, one of the founders. I just remember talking to her about like the wood there at the Renwick, and I was like, yeah, like it's not gonna burn, what are you gonna do? And she was like, anything will burn if you put enough fuel on it. I was like, I would expect nothing less from Crimson Rose. It was pretty amazing. I guess one more story about something that's too good to be true. Okay, this might actually, I'm gonna ask you, do you want to hear a story that's more like relationship related or another like work related one? Raise your hand if you want something relationship related. Okay, cool. Work related? Okay, relationship related. So last year I'm here with my partner for the first time. We're not partners anymore. But no, it's one of those things where, you know, you can talk about being on the same page and having expectations, but it's another thing to actually be here in it. And I love them. They're a wonderful non-binary burner and they're back here. And what I didn't expect was how this place would really force us to confront some truths about our relationships, especially like being poly, being queer. But what's really great is that we're actually in a much better place now because we weren't a good fit for each other. So sometimes what I will say about something being too good to be true is that it's never going to get better, right? And sometimes that's another red flag that you just kind of need to let it go. One thing I will say that I appreciate about my relationship with them is that up until then I'd always kind of identified myself as gay or queer alternatively, but with them being non-binary, I had to let go of like identifying myself as gay, because for me, and like I've had a lot of different conversations with friends, and this is not a truth, this is just my truth, but I was like, if I tell people I'm gay and I'm dating this person, I'm actually kind of misgendering them, which is traumatic to them. And ever since then, I'm just like, I guess I'm just queer, and I'm very, very queer. Woo, yes.
Yes.
So that being said, yeah, sometimes when things aren't too good to be true, they're not going to get better. Something better is waiting for you. True stories told live. If you want to be part of a burner storytelling project, even internationally, if you want to do this in your own region, please connect with me. We've done this at the GLC. We've done this at Fringe festivals. There are storytellers telling stories all over our community. And even if I can help you tell your story better, I would love to be a resource for you. Come check out Catharsis on the Mall in May in 2020. Check out Chapel of the Chimes Burn. Thank you very much for your time and your space, and I look forward to burning the rest of the weekend with you.
Woo! Thank you, Nexus! Ow!
Oh my God.
So good.
Yes, 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 yes. All the time. Always, always yes.